gente tem agora uma palestra com dois participantes, um painel de verdade, com dois convidados muito especiais. O primeiro convidado é graduado em Engenharia Elétrica pela Universidade de Massachusetts. Há 5 anos é evangelista digital, chefe da Salesforce, com passagem como CMO também na Extreme Networks. Já na Interests Networks, era responsável pelo marketing global e pelo atendimento e suporte ao cliente. Nosso segundo convidado teve um crescimento não muito tradicional no mundo do marketing e publicidade. Desde seu início humilde, vendendo cerveja, onde ele foi de loja em loja, tentando obter uma posição sempre melhor como marca, para hoje essa gigante global que é a Ambev. Agora ele assumiu o cargo de vice-presidente de marketing da Ambev, em janeiro de 2019, depois de trabalhar em diversas posições em países como Inglaterra, Canadá, China, e México. To talk to us about customer experience in the next normal, relevancy, safety, accessibility, I'd like to present you Vala Afshar, Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, and Ricardo Dias, VP of Marketing at Ambev. Vala, Ricardo, how are you guys?
We're great. Thank you very much for having us.
Pleasure.
Hello, everyone.
Pleasure.
My name is Vala Afshar. It's a privilege for me to be here. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce. You can follow me and connect with me, hopefully, after this presentation in the forum on Twitter at Vala Afshar. I'm going to talk to you about this crisis that's been evolving since the beginning of 2020 and what many organizations have had the journey of stabilizing their company, reopening their workspace, which is the phase we're in now, and ultimately, hopefully, growing our business in the near future. My company, starting in February of 2020, began to speak to customers, employees, partners, world experts and futurists, and our overall communities in terms of how we can respond and better serve our customers given the COVID-19 pandemic. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. One of the takeaways of our collaboration with experts is that we may be in this crisis mode and responding to the pandemic for as much as 3 years from now. You are seeing on this slide different recovery models. A quick scenario like the V shape, a more likely scenario like a U shape where there's increased likely given what we see today. So ultimately, businesses need to recognize between 18 months to 3 years, we need to think about how we stabilize, how we reopen and grow our businesses. So all business leaders need to really take a long-term view in terms of what it means to serve our stakeholders, our employees, our customers, and our partners. So when we looked at developing a playbook in terms of how we respond to the pandemic, we realized that mitigating short-term risk and stabilizing operation was the first phase. I would say from February, March, April to somewhat in May, we've had customers, companies that are in this stabilization mode. In the June, July present time frame, there are companies that are now thinking about reopening and actually executing to their reopening. This means leveraging technology for contact tracing, managing shifts, understanding how to monitor health and well-being of their stakeholders, leaning into technology to create a safe environment to reopen. And then hopefully, successfully, and this varies by geography, so certainly US and Brazil, we're still in the stabilized reopen, in my opinion. There are certain regions that may be getting close to growth. In other words, they have successfully been able to manage and minimize the pandemic. So again, this discussion varies by region, but these are the 3 phases. Now, in each phase, business leaders, like all of us, need to think about how do we make decisions, because safety, our stakeholders are key. How do we work? How do we engage with remote workers, remote business partners? How do we engage with our customers? And then how do we serve our society with our business? And Ricardo is going to talk about an incredible example where his team and his company are serving communities with PPEs, sanitizers, and all of these essential needs, which is traditionally not what they do, but they're now leveraging business as a great platform for change. Now, customer experience is as important as a product. That's a lesson in 2020. First lesson, every business is a digital business. That's a hard lesson that we all learned this year. Second lesson is that the customer experience is as important as the product. Lots of research points to the fact that customers are willing to pay more for better experiences. CEOs know that differentiation is based on customer experience. And if you look at the last 10 years of market-leading companies that have been able to grow their revenue and gain market share, they're the ones that have brand loyalty based on customer experience. So customer experience is at the heart of how you're going to reopen and how you're going to grow your business in this post-pandemic next normal. Now, how we engage with our stakeholders will vary dramatically. You know, whether it's physical presence in stores, online presence, social networking. We know in Brazil right now, the #1 channel for consumers to brands is through social networking, believe it or not. In fact, that's the same in the US as well. So you have virtual and augmented reality and artificial intelligence technologies really creating an immersive experience. You have autonomous delivery. 2020 is going to be the year that redefines the trajectory and adoption of e-commerce, 3D and additive manufacturing, machine learning, and natural language processing for virtual assistants. This is a definitive year for adoption. In fact, I would say, based on my experience, my own research, I believe we have had probably 5 years plus of e-commerce adoption just in the last 5 months. Some argue that could be as much as 10 years of acceleration by the time we exit 2020. So e-commerce is no longer, a luxury, it's a necessity. So now we need to talk about the behavior of customers. Now, in this last 5 months, you've seen convergence of context. People are using their home office as work office. They're using more digital technologies like video streaming to connect, so there's a convergence. You've seen an acceleration of digital and cultural adoption. Regardless of age, whether you're a Gen Z or you're a baby boomer, you're using technology and you're becoming comfortable with digital. And you also see intentional investment. The health crisis has led to an economic crisis. We have to all recognize that people are struggling, so their hard-earned spend means that there's now intentional investments. Now, when you look at investments of discretionary income, you can put almost 100% of spend into these 7 buckets. These buckets of how you move, where you live, what you eat, what you wear, how you entertain. So almost all of our spend, our customer spend and consumer spend, goes into these 7 buckets. By the way, e-commerce touches all of these buckets. So it doesn't matter the size of your company, it doesn't matter the industry that you serve, you have to invest in ways to connect with your customers through commerce. Now, as we talk about filters for how customers spend their money, relevance is the first criteria, and that criteria has always been there before the pandemic, and certainly it's there now. So as companies, we have to have deep understanding of our customers in order to have relevance and value to their quality of life and work. But since the pandemic, there's 2 other filters that are critical: safety and accessibility. So now when you talk about spending money in those 7 buckets, relevance, safety, and accessibility are now the 3 filters that businesses need. And that's why there's massive opportunity for digital commerce. Because when you look at the different businesses and different industries, that first circle is relevance, but then you have perceived safety and you have accessibility. In the US, I can't go to a movie theater. There are no sporting events. You can't really go to certain, in many states, bars are closing, restaurants are closing because you're seeing, again, a wave of pandemic that's hitting us hard. So there's certain businesses where this accessibility means you can't spend your discretionary income for those businesses. In other businesses, relevance and safety don't come into play. So as you think about commerce, the power of commerce is you're now enabling the safety and accessibility filter. So again, discretionary spending and essential spending before the pandemic required just relevance. Now, when you think about barriers to how companies engage with their customers in a post-pandemic, safety and accessibility come into play. So in certain industries, you're now prohibited in terms of doing business with them unless you have contactless payments, unless you have e-commerce, unless you have curbside pickup, unless you have a digital twin of your business that allows you to engage with your customers. At the same time, you have to know, because we have an economic crisis, you're going to see less discretionary spend. So these adjusted priority means that you have to really be able to prove and show trust to your customers that you're meeting their safety and accessibility concerns. Now, there are examples of how different industries are responding. You know, you can have a virtual babysitter. Sporting venues are not creating movie theater experiences to show relevance. In terms of safety, you can schedule appointments into a store so you have social distancing and PPEs to protect you. You're able to have surveillance and technology to make sure you're adhering to social distancing. You have consumers that are not directly engaged with brands without the big box middle store. So there are new ways of showing safety and accessibility leveraging technology. So there are all these examples of different companies in different industries serving customers, meeting their relevant safety and accessibility requirements. Now, in order to build that agile business, you have to have a mindset that says, I'm going to be customer-centric and business-centric. I'm going to create a business model and processes that take into priority of making sure safety and accessibility is priority. You have aligned around your customer. You have a lean technology stack so you can move and adjust using cloud computing, social networking, smart devices, and you have a sense and response. This is the mindset. These are the steps you need in order to meet the consumer demand in the next normal. Now, to talk about all of this, it's my privilege to bring one of the smartest, best and brightest CMOs and digital marketing experts that we know. Now, Ricardo Dias is Vice President of Marketing at Ambev, and he had a non-traditional rise in advertising in the marketing world. He learned the business from the ground up. This is 20 years of experience with Anheuser-Busch InBev. Ricardo accepted roles as a Vice President of Marketing, and he traveled around the world. From London, England, to Toronto, Canada, to Shanghai, China, to New York, United States, and Mexico City. He's been around the world as a journeyman. He's been named a Media Maven by Advertising Age, a branding power player by Billboard, and has been also awarded as the Internationalist of the Year for taking marketing risks that prove results in multiple markets. In 2015, and by the way, he's too young to be in any Hall of Fame, but in 2015, Ricardo was named to the American Advertising Federation Hall of Fame Achievement, the industry's premier award for outstanding advertising. It's my privilege and honor to share the stage. Thank you and welcome, Ricardo, a true Salesforce trailblazer. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Vala. And you know, despite all that, I don't have a Twitter account. You know, like so for anyone out there, if you haven't gone to school or university, you don't need to anymore. Just follow Val on Twitter. You'll get a PhD on the future of business. I mean, thank you. I mean, you're so
I really appreciate it. Listen, when I've connected with you, I learned so much. And as a CMO, as one of the top digital marketing experts, you've always said that marketing is about shaping a culture of a company and serving your community. So tell us how your marketing philosophy is so important right now in terms of creating a culture of empathy, trust, and giving during a global pandemic.
Well, as a marketer yourself, Vala, I think you and I are probably on the same page when it comes to something that you actually said in your presentation, relevance. You know, at the end of the day, shaping culture is about making sure your brands are relevant to consumers or to customers. And what we're seeing right now throughout this pandemic is exactly what marketing is all about, is about creating brands that are relevant to people, are relevant to, you know, to their problems and to their, you know, struggles. So at the end of the day, that's what shaping culture to me is. A brand right now that is not doing anything to make sure that they stay relevant, it will lose. I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or next year or 5 years from now. But I know for a fact that the brands that are not relevant in 2020, and you said it, I think, you know, 5-10 years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to see 2020 as a pivotal moment in business. Like we've seen it before many times. And I think this is the time for brands, you know, that are looking for an opportunity to become relevant and therefore, you know, win in the near to medium and to long term.
You know, and I tell you, anyone who's watched you and your company, relevance is not just about your core products. You know, you're the largest beer producer in Latin America, but in March of 2020, you decided you're going to get in the business of manufacturing and donating 500,000 bottles of hand sanitizers, which is not something you would expect from your company. But both Ambev and Salesforce believe that business can be the greatest platform for change. Can you tell us more about how you shifted your company to not only millions of bottles of hand sanitizers, but you're working with hospitals, you're working with major brands, and you're really delivering PPEs and doing as much as you can to serve your communities.
I think you've said it. Salesforce, Ambev. We've just had a great presentation a few minutes ago from Magazine Luiza, which is a big retailer in Brazil, and I think that these companies are they're looking at the bigger picture right now, because there's nothing more important than human beings, nothing more important than your customers. And I actually look up to Salesforce when we talk about customers, because you're right, we didn't know. As a matter of fact, a lot of people think we knew how to make hand sanitizer, but we didn't. At that time, we had the benefit of being a global business, and we saw what happened in China, we saw what happened in Europe, and we knew that as a company, that's one of the first things we could do to make sure that we could protect our employees, our communities, our retailers, our consumers, and that's what we did. It's something that I think that, as I said, companies right now that don't see their business based on customer experience or consumer experience, they're probably in the wrong business, or they're probably not doing the right things. So that's exactly what happened, right? We had to move fast, and we did it. As a matter of fact, we were able to triple our production at the end of the day, because we had more people joining. Other companies actually looked to us and got inspired and helped us. And therefore, at the end of the day, I think, again, this is a good example of being relevant. It wasn't through our core product, beer, but it was through something else. So you're absolutely right. Being relevant is not only about your product, it's about the entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. At the beginning of the presentation, I said, I believe that we've had 5 years of acceleration of e-commerce. In the US, we went from 5% to 15% of total commerce being digital, and it took 10 plus years. I believe we're going to go 15 to 25% by the end of this year. So some would argue in e-commerce, we have seen 10 years of acceleration. What are your thoughts in terms of the explosive growth and adoption of e-commerce since March of this year?
I have no doubt that we're probably going to see the 10, especially in places like Brazil. Keep in mind that a lot of people in this country that didn't have a PC at home, so their first computer was a cell phone. So we live in a society that's very savvy when it comes to their digital consumption, and it really helps if you have a cell phone in your hand. So I actually think countries like Brazil, we probably see the 10, because we're not as mature as countries like the US. So I totally agree with the statement, and more than that, even categories that didn't really have e-commerce as a substantial part of their business, like beer, where it was less than 1%, will now have to adopt a completely different strategy moving forward, because some of these behaviors will carry on. We saw it in China, for example. People stayed home even after the pandemic was somewhat controlled, because they enjoyed, for example, they learned how to cook and they stayed home. And therefore, if I don't have a strategy to make sure that beer is delivered to their homes, I'm going to lose. Somebody else is going to win. So I think this is very exciting, but at the same time, it will definitely, it sort of made me throw my plans out of the window and create new plans from now on.
Who doesn't like cooking at home with delicious beer? I mean, who doesn't like that? So, part of throwing the book out the door and really thinking differently, Salesforce research for Brazil in July of 2020 showed that engaging with brands, social media was number one in terms of how consumers engage with brands. Followed by digital displays and digital videos. In the US, it's social media, email, and TV advertising. Talk to us about how Ambev and your team is thinking about using social to even more personally engage with your customers.
I think it's a combination of things. First and foremost, I think the biggest mistake companies make is that they don't really put their dollars where attention is. And I think right now, the biggest currency is attention. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying that, I like this rather than that, or I prefer digital than TV or vice versa. What I'm saying is that you need to follow attention. If Salesforce is telling me that attention is on displays, I'm going to go to displays. Not because I like displays, no, because they deliver better results. I think that you have to be agnostic when it comes to making your media plans, and I see a lot of companies not necessarily following attention as a proxy for where they put their dollars. So right now we're focusing where the consumer is at, and the currency there is attention. And once again, I repeat, one of the reasons why Brazil is so engaged in social media is because of the fact that a lot of people have used their cell phones as their primary source of communication, right? Like I said before, a lot of people didn't have a computer. Their first computer was a cell phone. And you have in Brazil a lot of people that, their primary source of communication is a cell phone. And a lot of the social media is built for cell phones. Therefore, they're very engaged. They're very active there. And again, if you don't have a social strategy for your media, once again, you're going to be left behind.
That's great advice. For all you digital marketeers, go where the conversation is. You have to earn the right to attention, and that means you have to know where the conversation is taking place.
Vala, most of the people know this. And what blows my mind is that people, they do one thing in the office, and then they get out of the office. They do, they live a different life, and then when they come back to the office, they do something completely different. I mean, they know they're not spending their time here, and they put their money there. And I'm like, why? I mean, you're already seeing this out there, right? I mean, e-commerce. Totally. I mean, it's obvious, right? I mean, we're not saying something that people don't know. I mean, it's obvious. If you're trying to convert your product into sales, you're not in e-commerce. Trust me. Like you said, you're going to be out of 97% of the purchases out there. Do you want to really play in the 3%? No.
That's exactly right. And part of that is also recognizing some habits that were formed since March are going to stay true. So July 2020 survey of Brazil found that 90% of customers will buy essential goods online even after the health crisis is over. They're ordering online, the product is being delivered, or they're going to curbside, so they love the experience. So consumers in Brazil in July said that in order for them to go back into a store, the store has to require face masks for employees, has to require face masks for customers. They have to enforce social distancing. They have to expand cleaning and sanitizing, and they have to provide hand sanitization. So there's all these expectations, and if those expectations aren't met, you're not meeting the safety requirement. Therefore, people are going to continue to buy online. So as you engage with your business partners and you're marketing directly to consumers, how are you messaging to your customers that you care about their safety, and you're going to make sure all those safety measures are taken for them to do business with Ambev?
Once again, I think you said it in the presentation. And by the way, I want a copy of the presentation because I think it summarizes everything we're saying here. You talked about two things. You said every company is a digital company, and it comes down to the customer experience. So I would answer your question by saying the same two things. You have to make sure you have a digital strategy. E-commerce, for example, for a beer company, which didn't exist before, will have to be part of your plan, because especially for categories where people are buying bulk or they're buying repeatedly, right? And beer is a good example of that. When you consume at home, you sort of know the beer that you want. You need to make sure that you have a digital strategy, which is relevance at the end of the day, right? I mean, you're delivering convenience to people's home, and obviously we know that if you take Brazil, for example, 50% of the beer is not consumed in people's homes. Therefore, you need to make sure you offer the right customer experience. Yeah. And here we're talking about customers and consumers. So again, I think that these two things are the two most important pillars of any strategy of any company going forward.
No, absolutely. 100% agree with you. My final question, Salesforce also had the 2020 State of Marketing report with about 8,000 respondents around the globe, including lots of respondents from Brazil. And one of the things we noted in the State of Marketing report is that we expect AI-powered application and adoption to grow by 186% since 2018. So almost 200% growth in the last 2 years. We also noted that the top 3 priorities for digital marketing trailblazers, number 1 is innovation, number 2 is engaging with customers in real time, and number 3 is better use of data and analytics, because we both agree speed to value is how you get relevance. So the more data you have, the more analysis you can do in real time, the faster you can add value. You're a top award-winning Hall of Fame marketeer. Give some advice to other marketeers who are listening in terms of, what importance of innovation, importance of emerging technologies like AI, and how do you compete in the next normal using technology to win the loyalty, the hearts and minds of your customers?
Well, that's the $1 million question. I think if a marketer can do that, he or she will win. So my advice would actually be buy Salesforce stock. That's, That you look up the ticker is CRM. I mean, that's the first thing I'll tell you. If you're trying to win, if you can, and if you still have to go back to your day job, I look at data like dating, right? When you go out with someone for the first time, what do? You exchange data, and that data leads perhaps to a second date or a third. And maybe you'll get, you guys will fall in love and get married and live happily after. So that's what data is. Data is about intimacy. So if you're not building intimacy with your customer, with your consumer, once again, you're not going to have a relationship. And brands are about this relationship. If you don't have a relationship with that human being, you're not going to sell. So if you're not looking at data as a way to build relevance, which is done through intimacy, once again, I am sure that you're not going to get married. And this game is about love. And if there's no love, trust me, there's no way out of this.
And for those of us, I never thought this session was going to turn into marital advice, but you're so right. For those of us who are successfully and happily married, when you think about companies that you trust, first of all, trust has to be your core value. You're not going to have that second or third date. You're not going to get married and have a happy life unless you trust your companion. The second thing is that as you're trying to grow your business, and you're a company that has 65% of market share, so you've done an amazing job of being a leader, which means to me, the marriage experience with Ambev is even better than the courtship experience with Ambev. So how you as an award-winning marketeer is using data to not only create speed to value, which is the most important currency, speed, you're also doing personalization at scale. You're marketing to individuals. You're proactive in terms of understanding what the person needs and delivering to those needs in advance using data. So for all of you digital commerce and marketing experts that are listening to us, it's putting the science into art of marketing and putting the art of marketing into science. And you need both. When we talk about competing in the next norm, how you graduate in terms of maturity of using data from descriptive use of analytics to diagnostic to predictive to ultimately prescriptive use of analytics, where the company and the applications is telling your sales, marketing, service, IT staff, this is what you need to do right now to delight your customer. That's how companies are going to win in the next norm. I want to thank Ricardo for your brilliant insights. It's an honor for me to share the stage with a Hall of Fame award-winning marketeer. I think we may have 1 minute for questions. So if there's any questions you'd like to ask Ricardo, please do so.
Actually, let me add one thing that to your point, because in business, like in life, but more in business than anywhere else, love has no color, has no race, has no has no gender. So for a company, this is at the end of the day, the most important thing. So when you look at the data, make sure you infuse that data with creativity, because that's the combination of the left side and the right side. You talked about it. So don't forget about the creativity. So once you plug these two things together, that's love.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm taking so many notes here. I'm going to be watching this again and again, and I'm going to write about it. Again, you're fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for giving Ricardo and I an opportunity to share our thoughts. We will. Both companies are here to serve our communities, and we believe values create value, and business is the greatest platform for change. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the forum. Please stay connected. Bye-bye,
fantastic, fantastic. Thank you very much. Do you have time for one more question? One question, maybe?
Sure.
Fantastic. Well, I have to be honest, it's been a while since I've seen someone talk about love in a marketing e-commerce speech. I have to be very honest, and I've been around for a while, so that's a one-off, I think. That's brilliant, but that's absolutely brilliant.
We all need love right now. We're all struggling, all of us.
Oh, more than ever.
More than ever. So the best marketing strategy, care more. Care more.
Yes, absolutely, Vala. Well, guys, I've asked Sucharita early on today about how does she think the aftermath of this crisis is gonna look like? You know, people are using this definition of the new normal, and of course, you guys talk a lot about how e-commerce is growing and is gonna keep growing, and I'm 100% behind that. But and taking that into consideration, I mean, where people do you guys see where people should start with that to follow on that digitalization, with that growth of e-commerce? Where do you guys think people should start from? You know, there are so many things we need to look at. You know, it's data, it's about, you know, loving the data and everything else you said. It's about making sure you have a solid e-commerce platform. Advertise, you know, Ricardo talked about, you know, put the money where people is, where the attention is. But let's make it just a bit more, I don't know, tactic. I mean, where should people start from, and how does aftermath look like for you guys?
I'll say one thing real quick, and I'll let Vala. You know, he's much smarter than me, so I'll let him finish. But I'll once again, I'll repeat it: customer experience. You know, I mean, you already made the decision that you need to go. I guess, I mean, you know, you made the decision that you need to go, you know, fully digital on commerce. So, you know, look at the experience, and I think this is where, you know, that first date will end. Imagine you show up to that first date, the experience is horrible. You're not gonna go back. So, you know, I think that's the most important thing that you can focus on when it comes to, you know, starting your journey in e-commerce.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And in fact, our surveys show that 90% of consumers and customers believe the experience is as important as your product. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, I purposefully said we could be in this crisis state for the next 3 years. Hopefully not. But unless you have millions of tests, unless you have a vaccine, unless you have, you know, automated contact tracing, you know, we're not going to be able to get to the normal pre-2020. So given that, you have to recognize that foundationally, you have to have digital commerce, you have to have contactless payments, you have to be able to have curbside delivery, you have to be able to deliver to the home, understanding supply chain and the last mile. So we're in the beginning, but there's massive amount of innovations happening in this space. Visual commerce, augmented reality, and interactive 3D. The human mind processes an image 60 times faster than text, so new commerce platforms are using visual aid to accelerate the commerce experience. You're looking at machine learning algorithms, you're looking at digital assistants who are going to be able to allow you to speak to an application and order, so convenience and friction, removing friction in the process. And lastly, if we're talking 3 years from now, you're going to have autonomous vehicles. That means you can be in a car very safely. You don't have to worry about driving the car. You're now, instead of operating 100%, you're now a traveler, an explorer, a student, a business person. So your next dashboard 3 years from now allows you to speak to it and order coffee as you're getting close to your favorite coffee shop. In addition to the phone, I believe the second biggest platform for e-commerce is going to be a vehicle. The vehicle is going to be where you do a lot of your commerce, your shopping, your drinks, your beverages, your food. So again, when I think about the next normal with a long-term view, commerce is going to have many touch points. It's going to be enabled by AI. It's going to be enabled by AR, augmented reality. And you're going to have a lot of visual immersive. Again, it goes back to what Ricardo says. Beautiful experiences powered through digital technologies for commerce. It's going to be amazing. So don't fall behind. My advice to business leaders, invest in R&D and look at companies that can help bring those capabilities to you right now. Because if you don't have these capabilities, you're not going to meet the relevance, safety, and accessibility criteria, which means it's going to be difficult for you to compete.
And you might actually be able to have a beer if you don't have to drive, right? So imagine that.
Always a good idea, right? Always a good idea.
Love and beer. Love and beer.
There you go. That's just the best ending I've seen a day, a conference day ever, guys. Love and beer. What else can we ask for? Come on. I'm clapping. I don't know people at home, but I'm clapping here. Beautiful. Guys, thank you so much. It's been amazing to listen to you. I hope you guys take care, and I hope to see you guys next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.